Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Nurturing Astrology podcast. I'm Dominique Jaramillo, your astrologer and host. I believe astrology can fast-track personal growth, improve relationships, and empower parents. On this show, I will bring you practical guidance and insight from my own work, studies, and life experiences, as well as interview experts to bring you stellar wisdom from other teachers and professionals to inspire you on your journey. I'm so glad you're here and thanks for tuning in. So sit back, enjoy the show, and be sure to follow, like, and subscribe to catch every new episode as soon as it drops. Your shares and reviews are also much appreciated to help more people benefit from nurturing astrology. Okay, let's dive into today's show. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Nurturing Astrology podcast. I'm Dominique Jaramillo, your astrologer and host. And today I am back with Cornelia Hansen, my friend and mentor and co-teacher of all my Conscious Parenting with Astrology programs. And today we are excited to talk to you about the sun in astrology, which is, the biggest force in the astrological chart, the biggest energy. It's the one everyone knows what sun sign they're born under. But we're going to talk about it from a little bit different perspective, and that is its role as part of developing a healthy ego. And Cornelia has done a lot of great research and teaching on this, and she's written a paper on it. And we put together a really great program for this sun and the ego that we'll be releasing. And when that's done, it'll be in the show notes here. But we want to give you an overview of the sun and the ego, their association, why they're associated, and then kind of some tips for parents of how you can support developing a healthy ego in your child, both from just a general tip perspective, and then also the benefit of knowing astrology and what we found, right, in bringing these two things together.
Yes.
So we know in astrology, the sun represents sort of the heart of the chart, the individual vitality and expression and overall essence of the personality. And I always learned it was part of that journey of becoming. Like when I started studying astrology, we live in our moon, but we aspire to our sun, that's the journey, and evolution is to, shine our brightest, to evolve into our highest self. And that's the way I always saw the sun to be, right? But it's also the fire, the biggest solar energy that drives us, that will to be, to act, to do, to survive, right? So it's that big motivator.
It's the center. It's the center of our chart, but it's the center of our universe too.
It's the center of our universe,
solar system.
Yeah. So explain to me, your understanding of the sun, its association to ego, and sort of where your work in this began to bring these two together.
Well, I think it began because I started out in child development. I got my degree in that, and I learned a lot. And they don't talk much about an ego until later on. They talk about the concept because that was put forth by Freud. He was the first one to use that word, ego. And I found that when I was in astrology, they looked at the ego sort of the same way. But the question to me is, you're not born with an ego. If you realize what an ego is the thing that helps us make decisions in order to survive in our environment.
Yeah.
Okay. So an ego has to be developed. The child isn't born with an ego, but it develops through our development right up through our teens until the brain is finally finished its work and it's now fully developed. And you're an adult. And so that doesn't mean that you can't change it. The nice thing about the brain is that it's plastic in a sense. They can change with experience.
Right.
With changing our minds about things, trying out new behaviors, reflecting on mistakes that we've made and correcting them, etc. So I started to think in terms of child development along with astrology, because when you talk to astrologers, they talk about the sun represents the ego, period. Well, I think it's all latent there, but it's a part of our journey is developing an ego. How are we going to survive in the environment that we're in?
Oh, that makes total sense.
What is the very first instinct we have in an infant? The will to survive.
Yeah.
And it lets you know right away, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I need this, I need that, operating on internal bodily cues. You don't start getting into an ego until you start being presented with boundaries. Okay, this is okay to do and this is not okay to do. That's what the ego does, makes choices.
Right.
So the child is learning that. Okay, it doesn't mean that they have preferences. They do. We know that an infant lying in a crib will prefer to look at a pattern more than it will just a plain color.
Yeah.
Babies like to look at mommy's face rather than look at somebody else's face. So they already have preferences. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So ego is developing.
Yeah. So it's developing over time. Okay. So give me an example then of what is a healthy ego then is just being able to make smart decisions, make good choices, to learn from our mistakes or our choices and then make better ones. So give me an example, of a healthy ego. What does that look like, and what the decision-making process looks like of a healthy ego or maybe an unhealthy ego?
Well, a healthy ego can make optimal decisions at any time. Usually they have self-confidence, they have self-esteem, they're more resilient and adaptable. They learn by their mistakes. A mistake is something to learn from. Okay, I shouldn't do that again. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
Okay, and then because I'm accepting of myself, I'm more likely to be tolerant of others the way they are and accepting them as the way they are. So I don't have any of those conflicts. Okay.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
If you don't have a healthy ego, what are you then? Okay. Then you don't have that resiliency. You don't have that. You kind of stay stuck in what Freud called defense mechanisms, like denial. No, I didn't do that. Or projection. You're the one that did it. Or avoiding things. And they have more anxiety in their environment, feeling like some of their feelings have to be hidden. Sometimes they end up people pleasers where they're more dependent on what other people think than how they feel themselves. And they're basing their decisions based on what somebody else is telling them. Some people have to go around and ask everybody before they make a decision.
Yeah.
Make sure that they're making the right one.
Yeah. And it's a healthy ego sounds rare.
It is.
It does. I mean,
rare.
if you think about all those things that you mentioned in terms of, defense mechanisms, projection, like all of these things that we just naturally do as humans, a healthy ego, or we could maybe have a healthy ego in some areas of our life, but not in others. Is that possible? Because I feel like there's some places where like you can make, okay, I feel really confident there, but not there.
Yeah.
Or is it one whole thing? You know what I mean?
Yes, that's true. Some people are more mental and they're happier in an intellectual type of environment, whereas other people want social relationships. They want to be talking with people. They want to be interacting.
Yeah.
So you can feel inadequate in one area or another. He's great because he's an introvert and he studies physics and he does that all the time, but he's not a social animal.
Right. Right. Yeah, I was thinking about that too, about the sun sign too. It's like, I guess it could also be indicative of that sun sign and what you are aspiring to be. And maybe an air sign is someone who definitely is more analytical or thinking, or has that ability to kind of that, critical thinking. But someone who's a water sign it's coming from emotions. And so it's a little bit harder, to feel confident and secure. So maybe there's a little bit more work there, or, Earth really has to have tangible results or see things in order to feel confident, or, that kind of thing. So, or even the fire signs, more impulsive, in terms of their decision-making. And so that can cause them, that can give them a lot of confidence, or it could also cause them issues at times, right?
And they act impulsively and it turns out to be a mistake. Do they learn from it? That's the other thing.
Right.
You have to learn how to reflect on your decisions
Mm-hmm.
and go from there. Because if you just keep repeating the same old mistakes over and over and over again,
Yeah.
like you keep marrying the same kind of person that you don't get along with, but you keep making that mistake for some reason or other.
And I think then
Because it's
identifying
filling a sunlight.
patterns, right? Then start identifying
Yes.
patterns. I know a lot of people we make the same mistake over and over again. So it's like, okay, learn from our mistakes and then make a different choice.
Right.
Then you're developing your ego, you're strengthening your ego, and you're actually evolving your life and improving your life. So this is like the foundation of what we want to try and teach our children is how can we help our children develop healthy egos? And I think the one thing that is really imperative is for us as parents to understand our own decision-making process, to better understand our own egos and our own decision-making process so that we know and understand what we're actually trying to teach our children. And this is where the astrology comes in that's so powerful for understanding ourselves and our children and how we're different and how the decision-making process itself can be different.
Right.
And so we understand how you make decisions, but then my child makes decisions very differently. I, as the parent, have to make the adjustments, learn from, step up my game and be able to create an environment that allows them to really nurture their own decision making. And so it does start with us. Obviously, conscious parenting starts with the parent. Right. We know about ourselves first and can make adjustments, right? And so you've done research and discovered that we can actually, this process takes the entire chart though. The sun is the ego, but it takes the entire chart, all the personal planets there working together in order to develop this process. So walk me through sort of that whole picture of the chart and how the planets work together to make decisions. And then, we can talk about, because this is what we're going to teach basically in our class, but to walk us through that process on a real simple level.
If you think about it, like you're an adult, you make decisions automatically every day. You don't have to think about it. What do I want to eat? I'll go over there and get something.
Yeah.
We're not conscious of the process anymore. Okay. But children are learning. And so we want to go through the process. Now, first of all, you have to know that there's a field of attention. Now, if I have an internal, the moon is perception. So it perceives and the body lets us know through the brain, oh, I'm hungry or I'm cold and I need something warm on you, something like that. So the body has an internal reflexing going on all the time where the body's giving the cues to the brain. And we have to recognize them, of course.
Right.
And then we have an external. Okay, if I want something, I feel hungry, then I can perceive what's in the immediate area that I can have. Okay, I go to the refrigerator, I look and see, do I want that? Do I want that? Now you're evaluating, that's Venus. No, I don't feel like that. I don't feel like that. Well, I don't have it here. Maybe I can go out and get it. So you go through this whole process. The first thing is that you feel a need. You perceive it.
And that's
I don't
our
want you
moon.
to see as much as perceive, because perception is quite often internal as well as external.
Gotcha.
Because you look, and anytime you go into a new environment, you immediately have that what I call scanning the environment to see if it's safe.
Safe.
Because it's an early reflex that we have, fight or flee. And then our body handles it. If there's something dangerous, bingo, that adrenaline goes into the blood and we move out of the way or we fight. Okay, so we have the internal and we have the external. What's the best thing to do? And we have to make those decisions. But we make simple decisions. But there comes a time when you're going to make a major decision. Okay, now that's going to take a longer time. I'm going to move to a new city, or I'm going to buy a house or a car or whatever. And you have to sit down and take a lot of factors into consideration before you decide, what kind of a car do I want? What am I looking for? Is it just the color, or do I want it to get mileage, or etc.? So you're weighing the pros and cons of making a decision. We can help kids do that too later on as they get older. Okay, well, what would happen if you took this, and what would happen if you took that? What would the consequences possibly be? So you add up all of those factors and make your decisions. So that's a long-term decision. The other thing about decisions is you can also make what I call long-term decisions. In other words, I'm overweight, I want to lose weight. So I decide I'm going to go on a diet, which is going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to fill the need, but to fill the need, the goal is to lose the weight. And then I feel great because I'm thinner, right?
Right.
So we're willing to sacrifice,
Mm.
you know, in terms of long-term. Children don't have much long-term, you know, state. I want it now.
Right.
I want it now, not next week, you know.
Yeah.
So we have to learn that too, that we can't always get what we want at the time. We have to be willing to delay gratification, you know, for
Yeah.
something better. Okay, that's part of the decision-making process too. So we perceive a need, I'm hungry. We have the intention of fulfilling the need. Okay, I need to eat. Okay. Then I start looking in the environment. I'm thinking in the internal environment, what do I want? Then I go and evaluate it. Okay, do I want this? Do I want that? What is possible for me to get? What's in the house that's immediate that I can get?
Mm-hmm.
Or if I want something and it's somewhere else and I've got to go drive over to the store to get it, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm willing to do that. So you make the decision, you evaluate amongst the options, whether they're internal or external. And then you decide on your Mercury helps you make a choice. Okay, well, I like that one, so I'm going to go for that one. And then the Mars comes in and says, okay, let's go get it.
Got it. Gotcha. That makes sense. We're perceiving
So
that
all
even,
of
but
those
they're all
work
working
together.
Yeah, right. They're all working together.
Yes.
So the perception is on the inside, the
Yeah, and
outside.
sometimes
That's the moon,
simultaneously. Yes,
and
that's what
sometimes
happens when we get to be an adult. Yeah, we have gone through the process so often that we know pretty much,
Yeah.
and it's more instantaneous. But with children, it's all new to them.
Right. So you're teaching the process. That's the thing. I'm like, okay, you perceive a need. That's the moon. You're taking information. What are the options? That can be Mercury. Venus comes in to evaluate if I want this, so how I'll feel, whatever. But then you go back to Mercury to make the actual decision. Okay, I made the choice. And then Mars is taking the action and then maybe evaluating the consequences, what happened from that. And if I like it or didn't like it, you're going back to Venus and then you're logging all of this in your memory.
Right.
So for next time, it's even quicker and you know the process. And so I think that's the fascinating part about the development of the ego is how you're learning all the placements in the chart, and then from this perspective how they play a role in the decision making based on the position or the sign of the moon or the Venus or the Mercury, and putting all these into place. It's like this fine orchestra of how we make decisions, and helping our children learn how to do that for themselves. And so recognizing that, breaking it down for ourselves, how do I make decisions? You know what I mean? What do I do? How do I act? And really seeing whether it's a big decision or a little one. And then recognizing, oh, I can help my kid do that, you know?
Yeah.
It's a fascinating way of seeing the chart as like an orchestra, you know, and learning how to like conduct the orchestra in order to like, you know, survive and thrive in life, you know, in a positive, confident way, you know? So what can we, what
That's
are some
what Roger said is there's a set of functions.
Oh,
if
yes.
you have functions, you have all of these different functions. And
Dane
what are
Rudhyar.
they there for? They are to fulfill the needs that we need to survive.
Mm-hmm.
That's the basic thing the song says. I have a will to be, and I'm going to take care of myself, and I'm going to be successful.
Yeah,
okay,
you were
so
saying
hopefully
that
we're going to provide those things. Yeah.
You were saying that you've looked at ego from like the psychological, the psychology portion, and then the astrology, and that Dane Rudhyar was the one that sort of like the first one astrologer that started talking about it from that perspective, from ego.
Yeah, he talked about, yes, he talked like an ego psychologist, like um, Sullivan was one of my favorite psychiatrists, and he talked about what he called a self system. And I thought that's a good way to put it, because it's all of these different energies operating together. So it is a system that we use all these different energies in different ways to make those decisions in order to survive.
Yes.
Okay.
I
So
love
that means that you have to be pretty healthy.
Yeah.
You know, what's going to interfere with my being able to make mistakes? If I'm ill, if I have a problem, blind,
Hmm.
if I have a disability, how is that going to affect my making decisions?
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. Yes.
And if you have too much anxiety and fear, it's going to be harder too.
Right.
So
Exactly.
we know that the slow to warm up child is cautious about everything. So they need some time and they need some space in order to make decisions and follow through on them and then reflect on them to see if they worked or not. Because you can
Yes.
always remind your child, well, you remember you didn't like this. I said, but after you did it a few times, you got used to it, you liked it. So that's what it is getting used to it.
Hmm.
The shy child has to learn to try it at least a few times
Right.
before they make a decision.
Right. And I think that that's the benefit of, your own study and the study of temperament in the chart is like that's another way of looking at the planets and how they work as an orchestra, but the temperament is something we're born with. The ego is not. So that's why
Right.
for new parents with new children, really understanding the temperament is a real your first sort of step and a way of understanding the entire chart and the workings that they're born with, and that stays the same for the most part, but then the how to help them make decisions and develop that healthy ego is the sun. And in the midst, they're kind of like they're living in the moon, and then each planet wakes up along the journey of growth. And so it's really, I think, about understanding the orchestra and how all
Right.
these planets work together, and they're instinctively, like, their
Right.
nature comes through the temperament that's they're born with, and then the planets waking up helps develop the ego, which is the sun, and that's part of the journey to the sun, right?
Right. We can't start making a lot of decisions until we're able to move around, you
Right.
know.
Yeah, exactly. So teaching the art of decision making ultimately and evaluating the results is like key for parents to do. Like, so what are some of those other things that parents can do to support this process of their children, even without astrology, like, just to help support the growth
Yeah.
of a healthy ego, nurturing self-esteem and
Right. Well,
self-confidence and
think about what we want to teach our children to be confident. Okay. We want them to feel they have self-esteem. That's really important.
right.
The stronger they feel about themselves. So it starts with the first process of learning that, oh, whatever I need, my mommy's going to come and take care of me. So that first sense of trust comes during the moon period, you know. And once I feel that I can trust the environment, then I'm on a positive growth development path.
Mm-hmm.
So everything fills in after that. Everything starts to, it isn't until Mars, their first Mars return, you're 2 years
Yeah.
old already.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, that you start finding out there's boundaries in the world, that some things are okay and some things are not okay. I
Right.
can't do this. I can't do that, but I can do this. So they start learning there's rules in the world. And that's an important thing to learn. If you're allowing the child to just do whatever they want, they're not learning about boundaries and what they can do and what they can't do.
Right.
So it's important. So we're going through that process. And the Venus at the same time is helping us evaluate, do you want this or do you want that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I want that. I think
Yeah.
I'll try that. You know, oh, I don't like that. You know, well, let
Yeah.
me try the other one. Okay. So we have to learn through our experience. And this is all gets tucked away in our memories. The last time I went here, it was really great. But the time I went over there was not.
Right.
So I prefer to go over here. If mommy
Yeah.
says you want to go to the park, I say, yeah, I want to go to the park. Evaluate the decision after it's done. Okay. Did you like that? You didn't like that. Why didn't you like that? Okay. maybe if you tried it again, it'll be okay. But
Yeah.
if you don't want to do it this time, try something else. But
That's a part that a lot of parents, we don't really get to. They make a decision and they move on. And I don't know that we go back as often as we could or should to say, how did you feel about that decision, or how was that for you? And, that's to help them really work through the evaluation and the understanding of the consequences or what happened based on a choice, so that they have that self-reflection, that part
right,
to stop and reflect on their choices. I don't know that that's something that is real
right.
common or readily done. Even myself, I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, do I do that often enough to really say, how was that? Or, you made that choice.
Yeah. I mean, my early interest in psychology was exactly that. I didn't understand people.
Mm,
I wanted to understand why people acted the way they did,
yeah.
because a lot of it was very confusing to me.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's very, if you want to have what a psychologist would call insight.
Yeah.
Oh God, I made this mistake before. I'm not going to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it takes a long time to learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. You can see the difference between someone who comes in for therapy that said, this keeps happening to me, whereas somebody else will come in and say, it wasn't my fault, it was his fault.
Right.
He didn't do what I expected him to do, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We're projecting it out there on them rather than having insight into our own responsibility for our behavior and behavior for our decisions. Okay.
Yeah.
We have to look at our decision and say, was that good for me?
Well, I think the moon, we're
Was it
doing
my fault?
another program on the moon, and that's, that 2 years, that beginning to formative years where you're really meeting the needs of the child. And I think that's really important, is that a lot of parents might jump too quickly to want to teach the child resilience, and by denying them things or letting them cry it out or things like this, where it's really, that's the time to really create that security and safety in the environment, that their needs will be met, that gives them confidence that they can get their needs met. And that ultimately then when they start testing boundaries, it's like that's the challenging part for parents, but it's necessary because they're going to test. It's like a necessary testing ground for them
Yes.
to learn. Okay, so let's talk about the fifth house as the home of the sun, essentially, right? That's Leo's house. That's where the sun is, and the fifth house as identity. So we move through. We're born at the ascendant. We move through those first few houses as we're developing, and the fifth house is actually the sun and identity, right? And that's when we start
Right.
reflecting and learning about ourselves based on our connections with other people, or the 11th house, like others, friends, and things like this, right?
That's the whole thing about the fifth house, because you always have to bring in the 11th house.
Right.
It's where do I fit in with the group?
Yeah.
And it's a very experimental time. I can hang out with these. I remember my grandson said, I don't want to hang out with kids who don't do their work. And, no, I want to hang out with kids who are, want to be successful. I can learn more
Right.
from them. I mean, that's a wise choice.
Yeah, that's a wise choice. That's a healthy decision-making process where you're like getting out into like middle school and all of these, opening all these things, and you're like, whoa. And children making the decisions, can they make smart choices for themselves? Well, based on, this upbringing, can they evaluate and know what is good and right for them and say no? And so you really want to empower your kids to be able to
Yes.
do that. So laying the
Right.
foundation of how to make good decisions and understanding the sun and the ego and their entire chart and the way they make decisions is so powerful. I just think it's fascinating and
I
brilliant.
think that's what's so scary about teenage years to parents,
Right.
because I'm not there all the time. I
Yeah.
can't control his behavior. I can't give him advice. I don't know what to do.
Right. But if you've worked at helping them make good decisions and reflect on their choices and develop that confidence in their making choices for themselves that feel and are right for them, then you can
And you can
have that
trust them.
trust when you put them
Yeah.
out in the world and you're not there, or making sure the
Yeah.
door is always open. You can call me anytime. This is where, the letting go
Right.
as parents and giving them the freedom to experience life. That's the main way we learn anyway, is through experiences, regardless of what our parents tell us, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
nonetheless, it doesn't mean we shouldn't tell our kids things. It doesn't mean we shouldn't share our experiences and help them learn. to make good choices for themselves, but instilling self-confidence, self-esteem, and giving them the power to make little decisions early on and learn those consequences of those choices and actions is where we're really honing them to develop a healthy ego. And I think that's the power of astrology for conscious parenting. We're giving you like an overview of this concept and how you can evaluate the whole chart, because Cornelia and I have put together a really wonderful masterclass about this very thing. Check it out. I'll put the link below. But ultimately, astrology lovers, this is amazing insight for whether you're into astrology or not. But for the astrology lover and the conscious parent who wants to work with astrology, this is a really, really powerful tool and way to assess and get in there and kind of understand a little bit better our own process and ego, as well as our children's developing and how we can support them. And that's what we created in this program. So we're really hoping that that is invaluable, come with an entire workbook to help you sort of look at each of those planets and observe and ask questions about how that planet plays a role in the decision-making process from what you've observed so far based on the age they are and things like this, and then also understanding our own. So we just wanted to give you a little bit of a taste of this, and the importance of the sun in astrology is our essence and our personality, but it's way more than that. I mean, the ego is everything, and learning how to make healthy choices and smart decisions in our lives, like you said, is like base survival. And in order to be successful in life, happy and fulfilled and successful and reach our highest potential. And I know that is what so many parents want, is how can I help support my child to reach their highest potential, right? So we can use astrology to understand how we can help our children learn to make smart choices, develop a healthy ego, and reach that highest potential and success in life. Okay, great. Well, this is so good. And the Sun program, I'm very excited about. We're also have done a moon program. So we'll dive into, kind of the bookends of this, where we born and that early 2 years of meeting the needs of our child and understanding the needs, and also that from a mother's parenting perspective. And then the sun and developing this healthy ego are kind of the bookends. And then we've done all these programs in between about diving into each planet. This is the big picture, but it encompasses all of the personal planets, and we kind of touch on every one. And like I said, the workbook helps you walk through that of each one. So thank you so much for giving us a taste of this, Cornelia, and I'm excited about sharing this teaching with everyone. And stay tuned for the next one. We'll talk more about the moon, and you can always look back to other shows we've done. We've done a lot of great talks on temperament, the different planets, and all of the programs are on nurturingastrology.com. In the parent portal, we have a parenting classroom with all the past teachings. And this will be available there as well as soon as it's live. So check out the show notes for that link if you're listening to this later. And we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, everyone. And thanks, Cornelia.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. And I hope you gained some great astrology insight and inspiration from today's show. I'd love to hear, so drop me a comment or share in a review. Check out the show notes for all the details and links about today's episode, how you can connect with me on social or work with me directly. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. Oh, and for my moms out there, be sure to join my private Conscious Parenting with Astrology Moms group on Facebook. Come join a growing community of like-minded mamas supporting each other in the hardest job in the world with the help of astrology. Hope to see you over there. Take care and keep nurturing the nature, friends. I'll see you on the next episode.